circulation and safety, both at looking at how we cross Broughton Drive and how we interconnect all of these individual elements and make sure that there's clear access and wayfinding through the park. And then integrating landscape and native landscape within this whole system, looking both at landscape as something beautiful, landscape as something that protects habitat and water quality at the same time. So altogether, that view looking out from the water, if you were in an airplane, looks something like this. Now, I'll dive through each of those key components very briefly for everybody. In the marina itself, we are looking at adding new docks. We are looking at incorporating 2 potential floating buildings that would help provide facilities for some of the boaters, consolidating the marina and park administration in a new building, replacing the old building that was there, building a new fuel service and park maintenance building that would take on some of the existing storage components that are there already, and adding paddlecraft access. Key point, you don't see paddlecraft access on this plan. It's actually offsite, and we've planned it down at Rotary Park. After considerable conversation, we decided that that was not the best use within the marina basin itself, but it actually made more sense and was safer for people up the river and gave them better opportunities. The marina docks themselves would be a more robust system than you currently have. This would be a pile-supported system that something like the pictures on the right, the picture on the bottom right that you see is actually in open water in Lake Huron. So this is something that can take on some of the larger wave climate that you can get when the wind's blowing the right way. In addition, we've added a wave attenuator dock at the south end, and I will point, that would be right here, that can operate both as a transient dock for large boats and also helps protect the slips that are there from wave action when the winds are coming out of the south. I mentioned the 2 floating buildings, a primary building here, a secondary building here. These buildings would be located on piles. They would include restrooms and shower facilities, a clubhouse and kitchenette, and they have some mechanical features as well. In addition, we talked about that idea of a marina administration building. The boat ramp that is in its current place right now, this is the boat ramp. So we are looking back towards the city, and we are going to the right here. This is that marina administration building. So coming down the drive that you come in right now, next to the ramp parking lot, you would see that as a focal point. Second, we have a fuel dock building where we consolidated those amenities as well, and also addressing the fish cleanout station. This marina park and administration building would be about 8,000 square feet, could include marine education, administration, restrooms, laundry, and storage. It would also have space for the boaters, including an outdoor boaters patio. So there is some space for boaters that are coming in from out of town and people that are local slip holders as well. One of the great ideas that came up during our conversation in the charrette was doing something as a destination at the end of Pennsylvania Pier. We recognize that as a really distinct opportunity, but it will require coordination between the yacht club and the Coast Guard as well. So one of the recommendations in the plan is to further those conversations. A second thing I mentioned already was adding a kayak rental location. So this shows a view from Pennsylvania looking over at Rotary Park, and we looked at an opportunity to free up and better utilize the space that's there. The shelter that's there is really it's ready to get an upgrade. There might be something like some power hookups for food trucks or something like that, where we could activate that space. And on the water side, we would provide an accessible kayak launch into the river. Now I'm going to jump back into the park space itself. One of the things I mentioned to you before was consolidating those marina services, building a new marina building, and really freeing up space along that parking lot right now for something we called the promenade and the point. So the idea behind this space is building a flexible outdoor space that would work really well if you came down there on a Tuesday and it was at the right scale for you, but it could fill and work for a large group of people as well. We could bring a concessionaire in there, we could bring a food truck in there, we could have events. Maybe there's some fire pits down there and some smaller places. So this provides an intimately scaled space where the public can come down and enjoy the waterfront and creates an intermingling zone between the public and boaters. On the point, at the end of the point, we incorporated 2 additional buildings, a restaurant event space and a water education building. You can see those down here. So our marina's here, and that promenade space I talked about is right here. The inspiration for those spaces, these are two projects that we have actually worked on, creating really welcoming, open facilities that can host a wide variety of events, creating a connection to the water and making sure that we're preserving those views, which are really special, and making sure we're creating a strong space and a destination. We understand it's at the point and it's windy, so it's got to be protected at the same time, but we want to make sure we balance that with views. The restaurant and event building is spaced at about 11,000 square feet. Part of that would be for a potential vendor to come in and operate a kitchen and a restaurant. Part of it would also be reserved for event space and could be rented out for special events. The water education building has it has some administration offices and some opportunity for the future. This view looking from between those spaces, looking out at the water, could look like this. So with that events building on the left and that water education building on the right and that small plaza at the end out on the point. In addition, we designed additional amenities for the park space. One of the things that we heard was the park space itself is very important. We need to preserve flexibility for large events, but we also heard it wasn't used and wasn't programmed as much as it had been historically, and there were opportunities to provide more use for more people throughout the year. So we added in several destinations, one an ice ribbon that you see here that could also be used as a splash play area in the summer. A shade pavilion that could host larger events. This space is roughly the size of a football field. It's between 1.5 acres and 2 acres. It's a little bit smaller than what you have today, but it can still fit a very large amount of people. A gateway pavilion, which would serve both the beach and the park itself. This pavilion would replace the pavilion that is there today and needs some repairs. It could help serve the surfer community. It would have changing rooms and bathrooms. It's adjacent to a new playground where we'd consolidate our two old playgrounds and build a new destination play space, integrating that within the dunes in this natural area. And then one of the other things we heard was the tennis courts that are there are at the moment starting to end their serviceable life. So in the future, we would look as upgrading those as a pickleball destination, and that's one of the future opportunities for the park. This shows two examples of ice skating and splash play and how they work together. So this picture here is not a skate ribbon. This is a skating rink, but you can see that in the winter it's a skating rink, and in the summer it's a splash play area. Similarly, this is a skating ribbon, and it's used for roller skating inline skating in the summer, and then in the winter it's used for ice skating. When we talk about destination play, we're looking at an opportunity that could evoke the qualities of this space. This playground, for instance, is actually based off the wings of a bird that are here. So it's really talking about the special character that's there. It's a custom playground, so we've looked at a destination space like this that could really fit in with the landscape that's there. And this is what that space would look like from Broughton Drive, looking out east to the water. This is the gateway building that I talked about, a small events plaza. That playground would be behind here. And this is the edge of that ice skating ribbon. This is a view of what that space might look like in the summer. So we transition from ice skating to a splash play area, so being able to accommodate that summer use. One of the other things that we heard that was really important was Broughton Drive and making sure we control pedestrian access across it. We know it gets busy. We know people go pretty fast down it. So there's also, the city is working on updating their complete streets plan. And so this could couple with that, looking at enhancing the crossings, raising some of those intersections and making this a complete street, really adding amenities to make it more pedestrian friendly, slowing down traffic and making it a better overall use. We've taken a preliminary draft at the budget. We have not said that there is this budget that we are aiming for and we're cutting things out or anything at this point. What we've said is we have a list of items that we're interested in and that we want to provide. Our next steps to that budget would be looking at the resources that we have, both from a city standpoint, also from a grant standpoint, which there are many grants that are available for projects of this type, and then looking at private investment as well. If there was an operator that would come into one of these spaces, how those work together to pay for that space. So making sure that we're looking at all these components and seeing how they fit together, but we haven't said phase one is exactly this. We have looked at some logistics to how you might phase a project, though. So our the preliminary big moves are, one, looking at the marina basin itself, and then as part of that, looking at consolidating those marina services. After that, we would start to explore where funding sources come from and how that all fits together. So phase 2 might be that promenade area components of it. Phase 3 might become some of the park and the upland. There's 3 other distinctly different spaces, Broughton Drive, that Pennsylvania Pier idea, and Rotary Park, which really kind of can operate independently. They're not on top of each other from a construction standpoint like some of these other things. So we would want to work with the community overall to determine what the right phase and process is. And I mentioned funding. A lot of the projects that we work with, especially along waterfronts, we leverage different types of funding for, whether they're local funding, state funding, federal funding, and we look at how we stack those together so that we're not necessarily looking at the overall price of a project when we make a decision. We're looking at the financial burden on the city, and sometimes by doing some of those things, we can actually reduce that financial burden. The other thing that's important to look at is making sure we understand how things are operated, and that's one thing I actually forgot to mention before, is when we look at the overall project, we talked a lot about the things that were needed for the marina, the planning that was needed for the marina. A key thing that came up was boat storage. The city is committed to storing boats in the parking lot for one more season, so they're making sure that they have some security and people understand what the plan is moving forward, and then are currently looking at additional places off-site so they can provide those opportunities in close proximity, recognizing that this is important, and then working closely with Nick and his team and making sure that these operations are thought about in the right way. So this is the overall master plan. I'll leave it on this slide. With that, I can pause and I can take any questions, or Tim and Amber can help out with questions.
Council members, any questions? Alder Perla?
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much for the presentation. It looks great. I have a couple of questions about some ideas that I attended both the two meetings, and I recall that one element that was mentioned often and that I myself always thought that would be important is somehow enhance the communication between that area and the downtown. That's because what happens right now, in my modest opinion, is that the place is there, even in the conditions in which it is right now, but you really have to go there on purpose. So even if it is something very, very good, you don't know of it, because you typically, if you don't frequent that area for whatever reason, you don't go there as easy. So I go there only for specific things. So in which way you think you have enhanced the communication and the relationship between that area, that regardless of the amenities we will develop, we'll still need to have that connection with the downtown?
Yes, I totally agree with you, and thank you for reminding me. That's something that I don't think I made very clear, that is something that we heard that was very important, both from a local community standpoint, people that live here that want to go to the park and what that connection is, and also people that come in from out of town, whether they're boaters that are coming into the marina and you want to get them to the downtown, or whether they're visitors that are driving in. So one of the things that we heard is signage and wayfinding, first and foremost, is really important to extend that not just within this space, but along the waterfront, and to connect that overall. And then looking at those overall routes and making sure that we improve or make recommendations over the long haul with our complete streets plan that the city is doing as a separate thing to improve pedestrian access and wayfinding with those. Because to your point, it's not directly next door. You've got to really want to move from one place to another to go from this space to the downtown. So one thing we do is enhance this and create opportunities to come here for more than one thing, so you have more reasons to come down, and then improve that signage and that connectivity overall between the two to create more connection back and forth.
City Administrator?
And just in the 2025 budget, that's a process we're starting to because of the feedback that we're receiving. So we're looking at, Nick is working with Visit Sheboygan, and I believe he's working with BID, was the other group that he's working with on trying to package deals together. on getting folks from the marina into the community. He was going to reach out to a number of the destination locations around the area as well and trying to package that together. And then obviously he's kind of went a step further. He's reached out to the rental car companies and having them as a part of when they're booking, there's some follow-on information once they've booked of, we've got obviously the Bird scooters that are available, but also the rental car companies arranged it so that they'll bring rental cars down so they can get access to these other locations. And then obviously having access to the trolley and making sure that the trolley can get in and out. So we're doing a number of different things on top of wayfinding and things like that to help promote that integration from the marina down into the business area and kind of vice versa as well.
Any follow-up, Alder Prellen?
I have a couple more questions, but I want to leave space for anybody else.
All right, Alder Lefebvre.
Yes, has there been any discussion with any of the local organizations that we have in town that have and historically have used the lakefront area there for their festivals and like church events? I believe there's the Greek Orthodox Church has a big event down there every summer. Are there been any discussions with any organizations of getting them on board to maybe having other events? Because the more people that we have going down there for an event like that, we can showcase what we've made, and you might get more people to even come down to the lake to use the facilities that you're discussing here right now.
Yeah, we did have discussions with several of the groups. One of the things that we heard a lot about was there used to be more events and we're having trouble. We've lost our leadership of planning those. People, they did it for a long time and they couldn't do it anymore and no one was picking up the torch. So I think one of the key things that we've found when we work with spaces like this, when we work with communities, is that those programming groups are very important, whether it's the city or whether it's a public or private entity. So those are really important to facilitating the dynamic action that's here, right? That there's something that's going on and they need to be continuously engaged throughout this, not just now as a master plan, but they need to be engaged as the city moves forward to make sure their voice is heard and their needs are heard in a way that can help activate the space. Because you need to rely on those groups too, and then you need to work back and forth with them.
Any follow-up, Alder Lefebvre? No, Alder Ramey?
First of all, thank you for the presentation. It's very exciting. As a parent to two young children, I'm especially excited about just activating it year-round. My question is, so it feels like this is like marina so where is this would this green space at all be considered a park? Who's managing that space? Like who's managing the green space, the ice ribbon and things like that? Does that fall under DPW?
Yes, this would all be owned and operated by the city of Sheboygan.
And a follow-up then, so like the pavilions that we could have, you said like vendors perhaps, or like that, selling things like that, would that be a city thing, or that we would be looking to hiring I'm kind of confused about how that happens.
I can respond a little bit, and then Casey, do you want to just respond?
Yeah, I can respond to that. So kind of part of that is actually starting in the 2025 budget. Some of the proposals Nick is looking at is trying to do food vendor fairs where they bring food trucks down to the existing marina, and then ultimately he would look at coordinating those public events and coordination with the marina. So you would have that element where it's not necessarily a rental, and then those other facilities that would be there, we're looking at potentially one of them having a long-term tenant that would lease from the city, and then the upstairs would be a public space that would be available as a rental, and then the shelters obviously would be rentals that like we run like all of our other ones.
Okay. One key thing to add with that is because of where this is located and because it is officially lake bed, it does have to remain city property. This couldn't turn over to a private landowner. It has to remain in the city's control, and a concessionaire vendor could come in and operate under that as a lease. So that's another key thing to understand. This will always be city property.
Alder Decker?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I guess my questions are a little bit on like the dockings that are in here now. I know in the past we've had a lot of ice damage and things. Is that built into this a better version of that? Also, a little bit of concern about the facilities, the floating facilities. I mean, we have problems already with ice on docks. Are we going to have problems with a floating facility also in there? And what kind of preventions are going to be incorporated with something like that?
So I will start this response, and Tim might want to add to it. The design that we have included and budgeted for is a more robust dockage facility than you currently have. The docks would be metal framed, they would be on piles, so they would have, or they'd be pile supported, so they have less ability to rack back and forth. They keep more in place. The idea of the floating buildings could be floating, or they could actually be pile supported and fixed, where they don't move up and down, and we might have gangways that go to the dock too. So we're at a master plan level, so we've looked at that from a preliminary engineering standpoint to understand how that works. We've also added the wave attenuation dock to limit some of that wave action that comes into the marine itself. But Tim, is there any big thing that I missed there?
No, I think Tom covered it mostly, but I would add that, when it comes to designing the docks, going to steel or aluminum frame docks that are designed for ice loading is probably the most important thing. Going to pile supported near shore, the wave attenuator dock will help, reduce that wave, the ice jacking that happens and causes, as well as with that kind of structure, you don't get all the torsion you get with the wood structures and kind of the fatigue life. I know we had a slide in there from a dock system that I installed up in Lake Huron that's in open water. It's survived 5 ice seasons now. And so, they're when done correctly, they have a tendency to last a lot longer, even in pretty harsh environments. When it comes to the floating buildings, we've put several in on lakes that have ice issues. As Tom said, they would be they'll either be secured by piles at the corners, so they're not moving around a lot, they just move up and down. Also steel frame, so you're still designing for the ice load to be taken into account, and that actually is taken into account with the cost estimates and everything that we have built in.
All right, any?
Yeah, I have two really quick questions. Thank you very much, by the way. This looks really encouraging. One question I had is some of my constituents who live in this district were concerned about the green space and whether or not there's going to be a lot taken away as far as like overall square footage of green space. And I know that this is very preliminary, but I'm kind of curious if you can give us an idea of how that overall space will change as far as square footage goes potentially. And the other question I had is if you could address the parking. It looks like there's been some additions with parking, and I was wondering if you could kind of tell us a little bit more about that.
Thank you for that. I'll address the parking question first. So we actually looked at the parking counts overall, and I cannot remember the exact parking counts, but I do remember the percentages. We looked at how the lot was being used today, and we looked at opportunities for parking. One of the things that we heard was the ramp or the parking lot in front of the boat ramp was heavily used, does get maxed out, does get at full use. The parking lot in DeLand Park itself was not used as heavily. So what we looked at doing was eliminating the first bay of parking that's closest to the water. So right now there are 3 bays of parking that are there, and we're showing 2. And we use that first bay of parking to incorporate that promenade, the Marina Administration Building, and then creating that destination. And then we added some additional parking to there. So we're about 70% of the parking that's there now. So we've reduced it slightly, but we wanted to be mindful to not reduce it too much in a way that wasn't sustainable for the community. The other thing that's important to note is when we design a park like this, we try to design it for average use and smaller event use, but we don't design it for the 4th of July from a parking standpoint. If we park it for the 4th of July, you just have a parking lot on the water. And so it's important to keep those things in balance. And the feedback that we got from the group overall was that this felt about like the right amount of parking. From a green space standpoint, there is less overall green space than there was before. If you look at the green area that we've called the central green, this is about the size, or it's actually a little bit bigger than a football field. So it's not a small space by any stretch of the imagination, but it's a rather large space. What we've done is we've used some of the ancillary spaces and we filled some of those in. We've left some green spaces within here, so we didn't fill every piece of the park with stuff, but what we left is a big enough space here that can act as a large gathering area, and then we filled some of those edges. And what we found is what you really need when you design a park space is a really big central space and then really occupiable edges. So you've got that balance of big green, and then you've got those smaller spaces that people want to hang out in. So that's really the intent with this, is preserving that ability to have a large event, but creating more opportunities for day-to-day users to really enjoy and take in the park.
Right, Alder Perla?
Yes, the capacity of the docks, as far as the number of the docks, is that changed from now, or it's the same?
The fixed capacity decreases slightly in the docks. So I think now, offhand, and I can't remember exactly, but it's 260 at one time, somewhere in there. It's variable year to year, right, with ice damage. And so we're bringing that fixed capacity down a bit, but we have more transient potential space. Whereas now, when you don't have space tied up with a slip owner, for instance, it becomes transient.
And I assume that is aligned with Nick's feedback on the needs.
Yeah, so actually this is drawn not only through Nick's feedback that we had drawn through the previous marina study we did in 2023, that with even the previous operator who kind of laid out what the right size marina was for future operations. And it's really a bigger mix too of sizes. So there are, it's really laid out so that you don't have a bunch of small 30-foot slips that only 30-foot boats can use, but we have some bigger size slips that if it's not available or not being used, we can then put in, if you have a 50-foot slip, you can still get a 30-foot boat in there. So there's a little more flexibility to it in that way as well. Really, the big key is being able to do the wave attenuator dock and dock alongside can really open up some of that space that you just don't have except maybe on the weekend, right? You don't necessarily need 30 extra open docks on a Monday night necessarily, but you might need them on the weekend, right? So it allows for some of that for transient pull alongside as well.
I know this is maybe a long shot question, but I don't know exactly, and maybe Superintendent Curlin could help on that. I'm not sure, but about when was the last time that we actually replaced the docks? And are we planning, I just want to make sure, I just want to understand, you mentioned before, for example, about something you have done 5 years ago somewhere else, right? I would like to have the reassurance that what we do now, it is for the long term, that we are not going to need to replace these docks or work on these docks in 5 years, for example.
City Administrator?
Yeah, this is part of our ongoing issue out there. The winter damage is pretty extensive. We've had a number of years, there was arguments between the city and the concessionaire over who is at fault for some of the damage. This past year, we had kind of that really odd freeze that took place, and that caused $250,000 of damage, where it ruined the electrical. Some of the water lines had to be replaced, sewer lines had to be replaced. So a lot of very expensive work. As far as replacement, those docks have been there since it was constructed.
So the docks themselves have been replaced. If you take into the maintenance of replacing, because they're wood structures. Right. So when they break, they would go out and replace it. I know that they were replaced pretty quickly after construction. I don't know when exactly, but I know this issue goes back to 1993 with these docks. Like the moment they were in, they've had issues with them because of the wood construction. and just where, they've tried to do different things with the layout. You go to answer your question back to even the number of slips. One of the reasons we're at the number of slips we are is we're kind of hemmed in by the layout now that they've put in the breakwater that cuts across it, right? So if you look at the original master plans, this was going to be a 500 slip marina. You can't fit 500 slips in that space right at the moment, right? There just isn't the room for it. Back to like the docks and replacement, one of the things that's really key, and Casey mentioned it, it's operations and maintenance. This isn't a design a dock, put a dock in, and expect it in 5 years to still be there. It requires maintenance, and wooden docks like that, especially in this environment, are just maintenance heavy. And that is, and cities like them because if a board breaks, they can replace it. It's easy, right? But if you start losing lots of them year in and year out, the costs add up. But, if it's little things, that's one thing. So, in the design, as an engineer, we'll never assure that in 5 years it's not going to happen, especially in this age of seemingly changing weather events. But it is something that, the design would be there to make sure that we address all those concerns, or whoever designs the docks for construction at that point.
Alder Perla, do you have any other questions?
Yeah, just a brief one about I know that you said that you're going to seek more feedback with an additional final survey, correct? Yeah? Is that going to, because this is going to be published, if it is not already, I don't know, on the website, and then is going to be a survey right after?
Yes, this will be published on the website so people can see the presentation. There will be a survey that's put online. I think it goes live tomorrow. It is live now, or it's going live tomorrow. So people will be able to log on the same way they did for the last 2 times that we'll have. We'll leave that open for about 3 weeks. That's usually the peak period that we see from a comment standpoint. And then we'll collect that feedback and meet with the city and get additional feedback and wrap up the plans.
Thank you very much for all your answers.
All right, Alder Bellinger.
Thank you. I just wanted to provide some historic context. During my previous tenure as an alderman, I'm guessing it was between 2015 and 2018, there was significant damage to the docks to the point where we spent $800,000 to $1 million replacing a large quantity of them. Then subsequently, there was a study that was commissioned to look at the waves and the currents, and then there was the idea of putting aerators in there to mitigate some of that damage, and so that all happened, and it was a significant, capital cost to the city, due to that damage at that time.
Thank you. Any additional comments or questions? All right, seeing none, more to come if you're on the Public Works Committee. So, thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
All right, we'll have some mayor's announcements here. I'll start with the fire chief.
Starting off with the bang.
Hey, there we go. All right, so, and I did week. I know you said month, but
Yes.
the internet says week. So this week it is National Fire Prevention Week across the United States. So the observance of National Fire Prevention Week serves to remind citizens the importance of fire safety and awareness and prevention practices and preparedness in their homes and throughout their community. And whereas the National Fire Protection Association has designated this week of October 6th through October 12th as National Fire Prevention Week, commemorating the anniversary of the Great Chicago Fire of 1871, which devastated the city and led to the establishment of the modern fire safety standards. Did everyone know that? There we go. Whereas it is vital for all individuals and families to take proactive measures to prevent fires, including installing smoke alarms and conducting regular fire drills and educating themselves about fire safety. So whereas I, Ryan Sorensen, by the virtue of me as the mayor, I proclaim this week, October 6th through the 12th, as National Fire Prevention Week. Chief, we're just going to take a quick picture here. Chief, you want to say a few words?
Sure. A few words. All right, I'm kidding. He stole my thunder. I was going to throw out a quiz for a picture with the mayor, if anybody got it right. But yes, 1871, the Great Chicago Fire. I encourage all of you to please remember to check your smoke alarms. If you do not have one, or if you know somebody that doesn't have one, please feel free to call the fire department. We will be glad to come out and install one for you. So thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Chief. And only you can prevent forest fires. Thanks.
Thank you, Chief. All right, a few other quick highlights. So Sheboygan was recognized by World Atlas the other day as the second best place to retire in Wisconsin. And one of the key factors that led to this designation was because of our wonderful new senior center, Uptown Social. And last week, TMJ4 did some wonderful coverage, and we have some TV stars in the house here who were highlighted in that program as well, too. So we're excited for some wonderful coverage of another wonderful city asset that makes our community a great place to live and retire. City Planning will be hosting landlord training on November 7th at 9 a.m. at City Hall. This is a great resource and session that our planning staff provide where landlords can learn best practices and city resources. So call Planning and Development to RSVP for this program. Leaf collection starts today, so put your leaves on the curb. No sticks, grass, yard waste, just leaves. Exactly. As Tom mentioned from the Smith Group, the survey for the Marina feedback will begin tomorrow is the plan to roll that out. So we want folks recognition for that. Also, October is National Pedestrian Safety Month. So as I mentioned at a previous meeting, Sheboygan was selected to participate in the Mayor's Institute of Pedestrian Safety over the course of several months. So myself, City Engineer Kevin Jump, and Elise in Planning was involved in this program, and I know many of us alders and city officials, we get a lot of calls and concerns regarding speeding and traffic safety. So the tools that we've implemented and learned from this will help us move forward. And Scott, this is your cue to cue it up. So we have a quick little video that we'll share as well.
Prioritizing street safety is so important for quality of life in our community and keeping our streets safe. Ensuring that we're addressing pedestrian safety for vulnerable communities is important for a community like Sheboygan. We are proud partners in working with AARP and making sure that we're having livable community standards that really make sure that we're strengthening diverse populations across our community, from senior citizens to youths to folks of different economic income levels, because if we're making sure we're addressing those communities and how they're impacted, we can strengthen everybody across our entire city.
Buffering.
It's good for physical and mental health. It's good for quality of life in communities, but it's also good for business. When you have a downtown or business district that is more walkable, more pedestrian safe, it creates more foot traffic for our small local businesses in our community. And when you have more foot traffic, folks are more likely to stop in the shops, buy a product, spend their money at a local restaurant, go to a local bar or tavern. So some of the challenges are obviously first and foremost funding. Engineering, construction, everything along the way has a cost associated with it. So making sure that we're getting creative, we're using grants that are available, we're finding partnership opportunities as well, so we can make investments in smart street infrastructure. We've been making some great strides. We just got a Safe Streets for All grant. So we're going to be working on developing our complete street strategy for our entire city. Some of the roads that we've just completed already have complete streets components tied into them. Indiana Avenue is one of our main thoroughfares in the city that we've integrated road diets, bump outs, bike lanes, and walking paths, all different types of elements of complete streets to make sure that we're slowing down traffic, providing multi-mobility options on key corridors right in Sheboygan. I think there's so many resources out there, and the Mayor's Institute really helps us synthesize all those opportunities so we can bring those home and apply it to the issues that we're trying to tackle. And it's always just great to network and learn from other mayors. So just learning those ideas from this institute and how we're directly applying it to our complete street strategy is so successful right now in making our project and program so much stronger back at home.
So I just want to thank AARP and Smart Growth America for selecting the City of Sheboygan to participate in this program. And obviously, as we continue to have conversations of fixing our roads and our Complete Streets program, we'll be tying in a lot of these resources moving forward. So those conclude my announcements for this evening. All right, we have two hearings this evening as well, so we'll open up hearing number 8, 2425, pursuant to notice published in letters sent by the city clerk. This hearing is to allow interested parties to be heard relative to the proposed amendment of the City of Sheboygan's official zoning map. The purpose of this amendment is to change the use district classification of property located at 1202 North 31st Street at the aforementioned parcel number from Class Urban Office to Class Urban Residential. Anyone wishing to be heard on this item? Anyone wishing to be heard? Final call. Anyone wishing to be heard? All right, seeing none, Alder Decker.
Thank you, Mayor. I move to close the hearing.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor of closing this hearing, state aye.
Aye.
Any objections? That hearing is closed. Next is hearing number 9, 2425, pursuant to notices published by the city clerk. This hearing is to allow interested parties to be heard relative to amendments to a planned unit development with general development plan and specific implementation plan submitted by Malibu Apartments LLC to construct Malibu Apartments on the aforementioned parcel number. Anyone wishing to be heard on this item? Anyone wishing to be heard? Last call. Anyone wishing to be heard? Seeing none, Alder Decker.
Thank you, Mayor. I move to close the hearing.
Second. Moved and seconded. All those in favor of closing the hearing, state aye.
Aye.
Any objections? That hearing is closed. All right, consent agenda items 11 through 20. Alder Decker.
Thank you, Mayor. I move to receive and file all ROs, receive all RCs, and adopt all resolutions and ordinances.
Second. Moved and seconded. Any items on the consent agenda? Alder Bellinger.
I would just like to reference item number 17, and that is the intergovernmental cooperative agreement with the Sheboygan County in the city for the sales tax revenue sharing. When this went through,
John?
Again, going back.
Your mic. Just put your mic closer.
Okay. When this went through, back in 2016, I believe, I proposed a resolution to the council to oppose the sales tax. At that point in time on the council, we had some very pro-tax and spend members on the council. However, it passed unanimously to oppose this. I find that the funding mechanism or calculation, the metric that is used, equalized value, does not fairly represent Sheboygan. Sheboygan represents 42% of the population in the county. Sheboygan also has over 200 miles of road in the county, and it's the most heavily trafficked roads in the county. So I don't think we're getting our fair share. So I would urge those city officials that are working with the county to see if they can't get this agreement amended where we get a more equitable share of, I believe, what the city of Sheboygan deserves. Again, I'm not in favor of the tax, but if they're going to have one, and if the county's going to be so inclined to share some of that revenue for transportation needs, I think it should be done in an equitable manner, and I don't think the current metric, equalized value, is an equitable manner. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder Bellinger. Any other discussion on any of the items in the consent agenda? All right. Seeing none, this is a roll call vote. There was a motion, right? Yeah, okay. I thought so.
Seven ayes.
All right, those items are approved. Items 21 through 25 will be referred to the respective committee. Under resolutions, 26 are Res Number 902425 by Alderpersons Bellinger and Perella, approving the amendments to the general development plan submitted by Malibu Apartments for the construction of new Malibu apartments on the aforementioned parcel number within a planned unit development zone. Alder Bellinger.
I move to approve the resolution.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Alder Perella.
I just have a few questions to confirm that I understand the amendments. So I just need to understand briefly those amendments to the plan. So those are the ones that are listed in the letter, in the documentation provided, correct?
Who wants to take this? Oh, Diane?
No, I'm sorry, I was just scratching my head.
City Administrator?
Yes, we have the developer here if you want to ask him directly.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for making yourself available.
Yes. Yeah.
So there is a nice summary here of six items, I believe, and I just want to have a confirmation of a couple of things.
Yep.
So the relocation of the entrance of the garage and pedestrian, so main entrance and garage entrance will be only on 7th Street, according to this new plan.
Correct. It was originally off of Clara. You'd pull right in. Some neighbors expressed some issues with that, and we kind of agreed with those potential traffic issues. So now you'll enter, there's a surface parking lot, so you'll enter that surface parking lot off of either 7th or Clara, and then enter the garage entrance. So that was one of the changes, yes.
Yeah,
Yep.
Okay, very good, thank you. Nothing changes in and for the garage as far as the capacity of the garage, the enclosed capacity, the enclosed garage?
I believe it remained the same or relatively close to the same, correct?
Okay.
Yep.
But that didn't, and also nothing changed as far as there will be the first floor, so there will be garage at the first floor and then the other, so nothing changed in that sense, right? The structure.
Correct. The structure remains the same. The other, I guess, change to that first level would be the 7th Street. We had about 6 or 7 first level apartments along 7th Street. We decided to move those to the beach side. So that was another change, but correct. The structure itself did not really change. The footprint did not change. The building moved north and westward, but the footprint of the building did not change, correct.
Very good, yeah. And then you say that the building is going to be elevated 3 feet, and that will perhaps decrease the removal of the contaminated fill. Is there still going to be the need for removal of the contaminated fill, and how much is going to be less is removed?
Yeah, that's still a little early to know. The DNR and the county are still, and Stantec, the environmental engineering firm that's working with the DNR, are still coming up with a site implement or a material management plan. However, yeah, we are raising the elevation of the entire building so that now we'll be hauling in clean fill and able to remove less bad fill. This site does require pilings as well, so there will, if in the event there's any spoils from the pilings being driven in, those soils will have to be addressed accordingly to the DNR requirements. So I don't have firm numbers at this point because the material management plan is still being drafted and worked on by the engineers, but in general, yes, we'll be hauling more fill in rather than hauling more contaminated out.
That's very good.
Still fully capping the site and everything to the DNR standards and requirements, but
Of course, yeah. It just, I had in my imagination, I thought that the whole field, the whole land had to be the fill had to be removed. I mean, the contaminated fill had to be removed from the whole land, regardless of where the structure is located. So, but that's not the case.
Not the case. There are certain hot spots with some VOCs. There's certain things under the soils that if we touch them, we have to take them off no matter what. And if we encounter those, that's what we'll do. But no, that's not the case on all the fill. So, yeah.
Very good.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Yep.
Much appreciated.
Yep. Thank you.
Alder Bellinger?
Thank you. Jake, I just, I want to reiterate some of the comments that I made at the Plan Commission meeting. So number one, thank you for being flexible and meeting with the neighbors and the kiters and amending your proposal here. I think it says a lot about you and your willingness to work with the city, and that's the kind of developers that we want to work with and look forward to long-term relationships with. So thank you for that. I did get a phone call from Tom Liebel, who is the owner of Sheboygan Paper Box. And in full disclosure, Tom Liebel is a personal friend of mine. He just wanted to reiterate that he is in support of this project. And he knew that if the changes were going on, he's met with the city administrator numerous times. He's met with Jake a couple times, I believe. He just wanted to reiterate that they are a manufacturing business. They run 24, 5, or 6, depending upon the time of year and how busy they are. There is going to be some noise. And there is going to be truck traffic. And while they try to schedule their deliveries and their shipments during normal business hours when it would have the less impact to the neighborhood, they can't control when some of those trucks arrive and when they're parked out in the street. And again, Tom mentioned that he has no qualms with the city enforcing existing traffic ordinances and ticketing them if they're causing problems, but he just wanted to make everybody aware that they are a manufacturing business. There's going to be trucks, there's going to be noise. He doesn't want this down the road 5 or 6 years from now becoming an issue and some people being surprised when they move in there that it's like, oh, that this manufacturer is right there. So he just wanted to make that evident. And Jake has mentioned that he is going to put some sound deadening, sound attenuating precautions in on that west side of the building. That's correct.
Yep.
Right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
So
thank you.
Okay, so that's all I had. And again, I just am grateful for your flexibility in doing what you're doing, and I look forward to this being done. I am a little disappointed we're losing the restaurant, but I get that. So, but yeah, so maybe someday.
Yep. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alder Bellinger. Alder Lefebvre.
Yes, that's just what I wanted to discuss with him. At the beginning of when this project came in, there was that restaurant involved, and that's been scuttled now, I guess. Can you explain why?
There's a little kind of multiple reasons. Parking on Clara was kind of pointed out from neighbors across the street and kite community that traffic there might be an issue. It was over 3,000 square feet. And so it was a concern they raised, and we could see their concerns, and we thought they were legitimate, as well as we're not operators of restaurant space. So we didn't have somebody lined up right away. And so we kind of thought it was just a good idea. The safest route to go at this point in time was to kind of take care of both those potential issues. So, yeah.
Any follow-up? All right, thank you. Alder Decker.
I just kind of want to reiterate what Alder Bellinger said, to say that I applaud your working with the neighbors, working with the kiters, and we really appreciate your efforts to do this. And this is you're right. This is the kind of developer we want in Sheboygan. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Alder Perla.
Just one quick question I forgot before. You move 6 feet north, right?
About 6 feet.
Yeah. Will that preclude anything about the building of the potential second phase development?
No, it was just enough to not affect any of the second phase at all. So.
Thank you.
All right. Seeing no more cues, this was a roll call vote.
6 ayes, 1 no.
That's approved. Items 27 through 40 will be referred to their respective committees. Next, report of committees 43, RC number 114-2425 by the Finance and Personnel Committee, to whom was direct referred resolution number 81-2425 by Alders Mitchell and Perella, authorizing the purchasing agent to issue a purchase order to advance asbestos removal of Pickett, Wisconsin, for removal of disposal of asbestos and lead-based paint material to proceed demolition of the former Wells Fargo building at 636 Wisconsin. Alder Perella.
I make a motion to adopt the resolution.
Second. It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion on this item? All right, seeing no discussion, this is a roll call vote.
Seven ayes.
That's approved. 44, RC number 115-2425 by Public Works Committee, to whom was referred direct resolution number 82-2425 by Alders Decker and Ramey, authorizing the appropriate city officials to enter into contract with Bruce the Stump Guy LLC of Manitowoc for the removal, disposal, and restoration following removal of tree stumps located throughout the city of Sheboygan. Alder Decker.
Thank you, Mayor. I move to receive the RC and adopt the resolution.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, this is a roll call vote.
Seven ayes.
That's approved. Item 45, RC number 119-2425 by the Licensing, Hearing, and Public Safety Committee, to whom was referred General Ordinance number 19-2425 by Alderpersons Rust and Lefebvre, amending various sections of the Sheboygan Municipal Code as to update the animal ordinance. Alder Rust.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move to adopt the ordinance.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion on this item? All right, seeing no discussion, this is a roll call vote.
Seven ayes.
That's approved. Item 46, RC number 120-2425 by the Licensing, Hearing, and Public Safety Committee, to whom was referred General Ordinance number 18-2425 by Alderpersons Rust and Lefebvre, amending section 48-322 of the Sheboygan Municipal Code as to allow special event applicants to request a designated outdoor refreshment area as part of their event. Alder Rust.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move to adopt the ordinance.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, this is a roll call vote.
Seven ayes.
That's approved. All right, item 47, RO number 58-2425 by City Plan Commission, to whom was referred General Ordinance number 16-2425 by Alderpersons Ballinger and Ramey, and RO number 51-2425 by City Clerk, submitting an application to amend the City of Sheboygan official zoning map of the Sheboygan zoning ordinance to change the use district classification of property located at 1202 North 31st Street from Class Suburban Office to Class Urban Residential classification. Alder Ballinger.
I recommend filing the RO and adopting the ordinance.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Alder Perella. Alder Perella.
What triggered the change?
Who wants to take this one?
I believe there might be somebody online.
Is someone online for this
The
one?
application.
Is there someone online? All right, we see you try to talk, but we can't hear you, so.
I can suggest also chat would be fine in answering the text.
Diane, can you just provide a response? Just kind of the background of why this is being requested.
What triggered the change in this case?
Okay.
I believe the person was trying to send a chat. Scott, can you check on that? Very good. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you. Seeing no more cues, this is a roll call vote.
Seven ayes.
That's approved. All right, Alder Decker, we've exhausted the agenda. What's your pleasure?
I move to adjourn.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor of adjourning, state aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned at 7:10.
Well, when we have these really extreme patterns, whether too wet or too dry, too warm or too cold, the culprit in the near term is usually a circulation pattern that's unusual. And this was not, this is no exception this year. So we had a very favorable flow pattern in the spring for rainfall. They were getting a lot of rainfall coming up off the Gulf of Mexico, plenty of moisture into the Great Lakes. And then suddenly we switched to this very different circulation pattern with high pressure to our northeast and bringing down this warm, dry air mass. So, you know, it's sort of approximate cause. And then the long term, in terms of the warming trend, that's definitely climate change. So, for instance, we had a record warm winter last year. That's probably due to a combination of warming climate on one hand and also the very strong El Nino we had on the other, which typically produces mild winters in the upper Midwest.
We're talking to Steve Vavris, Wisconsin State climatologist, senior scientist for the Nelson Institute for Environmental Studies, Center